Welcome to the Visual Storytelling Podcast. My name is Fred Ranger, and I'm so excited today because I have a very, and I insist, very special guest with me today. His name is Phil Penman, right from New York. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries, man.
We had a bit of a technical issue. Now we're using Zoom and we're all ready to go. But before we jump in, I just want to do a little intro because I will say, Phil, you're probably one of my favorite photographer. I will say of all time and of obviously of the modern era.
No pressure.
But you are a UK-born, now New York-based photographer that have documented New York for the past 25 years. That's fascinating already. You've worked with clients like the New York Review book, to The Guardian, also photographed celebrities with living legends like Jennifer Lopez, Bill Gates, to say the least. And you've captured moments such as September 11th, so very important moment in time. You've got a very distinct style. You've love black and white. Actually, your debut book that I love called Street, that I have here for those who are watching this, you must have this book in your library, has actually been an Amazon bestseller. So my first question to you, Phil, is do you actually sleep at night, or you just work all day and all night?
It's pretty much like that. It's every minute of the day you're doing something. I was joking with a friend, like you sit on the toilet and you're answering emails or responding to something. So there's never a moment when you're doing some kind of work, but you kind of have to,
You know what?
If you want to push your career, you got to do it.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. But speaking of career, so can you walk us through for the three people out there who don't know you, can you walk us through a bit of how, you got started in photography and what actually made you stay in photography?
All the millions and millions of dollars.
That's good. That's a good reason.
Keeps you in it. So originally my dad was a photographer, still is. I wanted to be a sports teacher, and you have your choice of A-levels. So he was always insistent that I had to have a backup. So photography was my backup. I flunked sports studies really, really badly, if you can believe, and passed my A-levels with flying colors of photography. So it was that was my start of my journey. I went straight into the workforce at like 18, 19, working for local newspapers. Got the job opportunity of a lifetime working for a company in Los Angeles in like early 2000, and just jumped on a plane. And next thing you know, I was in the US, which was kind of my long-term goal anyway. I've always been a very goal-orientated person. So set myself this goal of working for the independent newspaper and shooting features. And then at like 22 years old, I achieved my goal already, working in New York, working for the independent, shooting portraits of, like you said, Bill Gates, Christopher Reeve, and all these cool people. And that was the start, and it's just gone on from there.
Wow, it's actually a good way to start your career, just photographing celebs and having a start with the papers and magazine. But would you say that the photographer you were back then is completely different than the one you are today? I did listen to some interviews you made with Barnack Hours or Leica Academy and so on and so forth, and there seems to be a moment in time where there's the old Phil Penman photographer and then the new one. It's an evolution, I would say.
Yeah. These back then they used to be sharp. No, it's you have this crunch point in your career where I found myself thrown into this celebrity world, which I never really wanted to be in. But it was kind of like you had to do it because staying in this country is very, very difficult. If you're from overseas, just trying to get over here is very, 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 very tough. So I was stuck in this world. And then like 2015, I was just going out every single day, just hating life. My poor wife had to deal with me moaning every single day. And I knew there had to be a transition. Like I needed to go back to photography. my dad used to say to me, he didn't like that I was doing the celebrity stuff either. So there was this transition where I quit the celebrity altogether, took a sales job working for a cycling company called Castelli. Did that for 3 years, basically selling Lycra race clothing to clients all over the Northeast. And at the same time, I was trying to build up my career again going back to photography. So I did it for 3 years until the point where I could make enough money doing the street stuff. And it kind of spiraled. I didn't really expect the success that I have achieved in it. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to make it in photography, full stop. But I did have, everyone thinks that it's kind of like it just lands on your doorstep. But for me, it was eating shit for 15 years, doing the celebrity stuff, working for certain publications and building up relationships with people. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am now.
Well, I will say that you are probably one of the photographer out there who I admire the most in terms of the work, but also the work ethic, if that is a thing, because you don't only see the result, but you kind of communicate very eloquently on the hard work that needs to be put in to get to a certain level where you feel, even slightly comfortable doing this day in and day out. And there's never, an end goal. There's never I made stop. It, right? Exactly.
No, yeah, it's like right now I'm going through this crisis of my head of like, right, you've got to get better. Like, how do you get better? So like trying different stuff. So like, Titarenko style with the long exposure, I'm working on that a lot at the moment. It's just like, all right, how, what the typical street is, okay, what people think of street photography. And it's like, you don't want to just get stuck in this envelope, but that's what it is. Like, it can be so much more.
Yeah.
And how do you create that? Or how do you bring some elements of maybe fine art into your work? It's got to be better.
And I want to explore that a bit. I think you're going off a very interesting tangent here. Would you say that storytelling, this is the visual storytelling podcast, so would you say that storytelling is or going to be part of your work more than ever? And how do you actually leverage or use storytelling as a tool, as a creative tool?
I think it's always been there, like the storytelling, and it's very personal. Okay, the story that you're telling is very personal. Like even the projects that you pick, you can't just do anything. It has to be something that's important to you. So I have that in me, and like I'm constantly putting projects together of things that are, I have a personal attachment to. The problem is like, how do you translate that so the general public can see it and not have a bias to it as well? So whatever story you tell, it can't be biased. So a lot of the time you're shooting stuff where you might not necessarily agree with the person that you're doing the shoot with, but it's important that you tell their side of the story.
Yeah.
So there's that. I've always been very aware of that. Like I'm very against the propaganda news that we have, where it's like just two sides, and you can watch one or the other, and you kind of know where they're coming from. So in my storytelling, as it were, I'm always very conscious that I can't have a bias.
Do you believe in having a style, finding your voice or your style through photography, or the way you
have to? You
have to. Okay, but I think I like the duality here of documenting it like it is, but through your voice and your style without necessarily taking a side. That's a very interesting idea.
There's the social media theme, right? So everyone saw what kind of photography was popular, like the abstract, black and white, very, I wouldn't say soulless, but it's very just like everyone's shooting the same thing. And if you go against that grain, then the social media curve algorithm might work against you. So you find yourself caught in this like dilemma of, do I shoot the same shit that everyone else is doing and get the attention, or do I go off and do what I want to do? Like I always find like you're having to trick people to see your other work. You might have to lead with a certain picture and then bring them into the work that you want to show them.
That is so true. And
it's tough.
Had multiple conversations with other photographers on this very podcast and my channel. And a lot of us are seeing it as a necessary evil, but a lot of us are also understanding how it works. To your point, I think when you're starting to see or to understand how the algorithm works, there's a way to actually position your stories and the image you capture, your work, in a way that's true to yourself, but that can actually be interesting for the platform. Actually, it's a great point. I love your series about work that's not fit for Instagram, yet it's actually on Instagram. So explain that, Phil Penman.
You're basically trying to lead people. Like all the work that I want to show people is on my website. So if you go, there's a page on there called Latest, and it's just a stream of work that I can't put on Instagram because it might not fit the algorithm. But when I do like send that out to people, those are the images that people buy. Those are the prints that they want. The one that gets zero attention on Instagram will be the print that someone has hanging on their wall. So I just find it very interesting that, I was talking to someone else about this the other day, where it's like someone did an exhibit and it was like everything was Instagram clickbait. There was no theme to the exhibit. So, I've tried very hard to steer away from going down that path of just shooting the same as everybody else. Because in longevity as a career, you're not going to get anywhere by doing that. You're now, and you have to evolve as a photographer. You have to get better, and you have to try changing new styles.
And speaking of styles, I mean, your use of black and white, of course, I mean, this book that I have in front of me, Street, is a testament to it. But your work in black and white is sublime. We have a saying in French called the quintessence of black and white photography. But more than the actual images, it's the soul that you bring, and that's my way of describing it. The soul you bring to the image. How has black and white either changed or made you evolve as a photographer, and why are you embracing it so much?
It was escapism, I'd say. The day-to-day work that I was doing was all celebrity. It was all in color. Everything had to pop on the page. So every shot you had to be very colorful and look good on a page. So I always kind of thought of color as work. So when I started going out and I was, I had the two cameras with me, the Canon set up for the celebrity stuff, and I had the Leica set up. It was like black and white was a different mindset. And then once they started introducing like that lovely EVF that you got on top of your camera there, and you could go and actually see the world in black and white while you were shooting, then it was like you've been transported to another place. So that's when I really, really started to get into it. Like I really loved shooting it because, you could go out in a snowstorm and you could feel like you've gone back 60, 70 years,
That is,
and you're seeing it play out on the camera.
Yeah,
which is the cool part. Like it's actually live that you're seeing this, and it's very hard not to get caught up in that. And I've always found that when I'm getting very emotional with the pictures and when I'm taking them, that's when I'm getting my best stuff.
Are you? Do you make it a point to always shoot black and white, or sometimes you're shooting raw and you're taking a look at the color image just in case? I mean, I'm thinking about this red light photo in the winter time. I guess it's New York.
Right.
One of my favorite of yours. Did you look at it in black and white first? Like, what was the process, the thought process?
So I have a few different camera setups. I have like the Leica monochrome, which is just ridiculously good. Then I have a SL2 and an M11. But most of the cameras that I had leading up to the monochrome were all, you could shoot color, you could view in black and white, but you always knew that the raw was recording in color. Viewing in black and white, again, it was more personal, like enjoyment. Like I'm let's put it this way, I'm more concerned about the enjoyment of taking the picture than maybe the final product, you know. So I have it, you know, I've had 3 moments in my career where it's like, I call them kind of like hell yeah moments, where you're shooting and you get very wrapped up and caught up in what you're shooting, and you're always chasing that adrenaline rush that you had from shooting that. The color stuff, again, unless I'm shooting with a monochrome, I can always go to it and view it. But again, you know, we're all smart people. We know what color looks like. We can view it. So.
And speaking of color, you admitted to the Barnaghauer interview that now I got out and shoot. Now that I go out and shoot people walking turkey for a living and get paid for it, you know, feels good. So would you ever in your wildest dream thought about you being on the street taking photos of a guy walking a turkey and, you know, earning money out of doing that?
Someone actually sent me a message for Instagram the other day, because I just got back from a trip, took off to Europe for a month, getting paid to teach people how to take pictures, and traveling around Italy doing recon for a workshop I'm doing in September. And they said to me, in your wildest dreams, when you were chasing on that bicycle, chasing Madonna around, did you ever think that you would be doing this 10 years later or so? So no.
But what I really like about your path to photography, Phil, is that, and I'm telling you, influencers on Instagram, you worked for it. You know, you said it yourself. You eat shit for like 15 years doing something you hated, and you invested the time, the effort, even your own money to buy some, you know, gear to get to the point you are. And you didn't choose the cheapest, you know, gear to start with those Leicas.
Well, the gear is just the start. It's like the marketing side of it. If you know, people constantly come to me and say, well, what's it going to take? And I said, probably about $100,000.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to put $100,000 of your money into trying to make it.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to do a book, you know, it could be anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000 just to pay a book, to make a book. And then that's just the starting point. You've got to have the relationships have to be already set in place, like the papers, the contacts, the editors, all those friends of yours that you can call on when you do have a book. You know, you have to have all of that in place. And that's the 15 years of eating shit working for an editor. It's funny, I used to try to do favors for other photographers. And I remember this was a favorite where this guy wanted a job working as a photo editor. And it was for the Daily Mail. They had a job. And then he calls them up, speaks to them and goes, and what? Oh, this is the Daily Mail. Sorry, I thought it was the Guardian. And completely insulted him. So it went from me trying to do this person a favor to me now owing this paper a favor. But because I did this, it developed a good relationship with that newspaper, which led to when I had my first exhibit, who did a massive piece about my exhibit, that paper.
Boom. Yeah.
So I had to eat a little shit, but it paid off in the end.
But again, it's social media these days gives you the impression that overnight, you know, you can get 100,000 followers and, you know, and off you go. And some photographers are not helping in that direction, because you look at their lifestyle and they're getting invited to this camera brand, desert island trip, and so on. But you have to decide, do you want to be an artist or do you want to be a brand ambassador for, and again, I know you're a brand ambassador. I also had an association with another brand. You have to decide, you know, like you can push in that direction 5%. Or that direction. Exactly. It's
5% of it. If you want to have a career, like a career as a photographer, like I have 27 so far. But if you want your work to be remembered when you're dead, or like as an artist rather than someone who just gets likes, then it can't be about that.
I agree.
You know, there has to be this, you know, personal integrity as a photographer as well. So for me, I would rather have the longevity of the work, like where people say, yeah, that's, you know, quality work and it's remembered 30 years, rather than chasing the likes, because you're never going to win that battle anyway. The algorithm changes whenever they feel like it. And talking about the 100,000 followers, it's like I still haven't hit it, and it's probably one of the most painful things.
Well, I think where I do relate with what you just said is, you know, it's the difference between having impact and leaving a legacy. I think for me, one is way more interesting than the other. Having impact, everybody can do it, or, you know, a lot of people can do it. Leaving a legacy, I mean, we're talking, you know, Joel Merowitz and Fred Horizon, like all these guys, their art will outlive them for, you know, centuries. So that for me is just, you know, where you know you made it, you know, finally. But you're not there to appreciate it.
How many masters, modern day contemporary masters, can we even think of? Like every time we think of like who are the greats, we go back to the people who were like 40, 50 years ago. Like now I'd say for me, Salgado living.
Yeah.
But there's not many.
I mean, for me, Matt Stewart is way up there, but it's debatable.
Yeah,
I mean,
Matt's a very good photographer.
Yeah, and Phil Penman, I don't know if you know that guy. Great photographer. But I like this point about leaving a legacy. But for you, what makes a good image? I know it's a silly question because it's so subjective, but I'm interested in learning a little bit more about how you actually perceive what makes a good image.
Ooh, it's a tough one because I'm critical, so critical. I think when you see it, you know it.
Okay.
Like I've walked into an exhibit. It was at the Guggenheim, and I saw a Pierre Mondrian piece, and I just like, whoa, you know, holy shit, like that's good.
Yeah.
Or it's like when you stand in front of a Pollock and you just like, what the hell? Like, how did that all come together? You just look at it and it's just a feeling, you know it. You know, I can look at any one of my images and pick it to pieces. Yeah. So I think I have maybe 2, maybe 3 images where I can go, all right, yeah, happy with that, you know?
And is there one image that you took that you're like, okay, so this one, you know, didn't get any likes, not selling super well, but for me, that's, you know, it's mine. It's my photo and nobody else took it.
I think a lot of that comes down to an emotional attachment to an image as well, though.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, there are always going to be images that are, you know, very important to you. That's the hard part. Like when you do a book, you have to, you know, or you're putting a piece together, you always got to have an outside eye, like a good curator who looks at your work and can decipher that. All right, well, I know that's very personal to you, but it's not a very good picture. Yeah,
exactly. So you have to kind of detach, which is super hard because we're humans, to detach yourself from the actual image itself. So that's why there's, you know, people who do that for a living, curating work and recommending. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think you said it best. You have to make unique work that you're aligned with, but you also have to either play the algorithm or make a book that people will actually buy, you know, at the end of the day. You cannot just always go with your emotional attachment to images you took. You and I have exchanged emails at 4:30 this morning, and for me, it's my regular wake-up call, and I guess it's the same for you. So let's go back to the work ethic. So are you a crazy guy like me who gets up at 4:30 and starts working or starts, you know, thinking or writing?
The only way, man.
There you go. There you go.
Only way. If you don't want to get distracted by text messages and social, it's that you've got like that 3-4 hour window in the morning where you can like nail everything out the window, and then you can go out, you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I'm pretty early bird.
Do you go every single day outside a shoot, or sometimes you do admin inside and, you know?
No, yeah. So normally I'll head out early and shoot, you know, tackle all the emails, all that stuff that came in overnight, get that done, head out the door, go shoot for a few hours, come back and do admin work, play catch up. A lot of my days these days are just teaching.
Yeah.
So like, the next week I've got one day where I'm not teaching. So like 6 days straight. And then I'm pretty much booked for every single week for the next 2-3 months that I'm doing at least 2 sessions a week.
Wow. And is it all with Leica, or is it your own workshops? And
No, it's one to one. So people that reached out to me through my website, and then I just did 2 Leica workshops in London, and then like I said, I got back from Napoli like 2 days ago, and I have another Leica workshop I'm doing at the end of this week, and then the next one is in DC in August, and then one in September in Rome.
nice.
So
Yeah, the Rome one, I was super interested because I'm going to Italy, but the dates are just like slightly off. So maybe next time.
Yeah, that was nuts because we were trying to think of new cities to do in Rome.
Yeah.
I think we had one left.
Oh.
Like we pretty much sold out like 9 spots in the first 5 days. So
wow.
It's a popular destination.
Well, I mean, I'm actually going to the Amalfi Coast and this region. So I've done other shoots.
Naples.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So
yeah, definitely hit Naples. That's an incredible place to shoot.
Can't wait.
Just watch your bag.
Yes. Phil, talk to me about, because I mean, some of our listeners are really interested in learning a little bit more about your process with the camera. So first off, my question would be, it's an obvious one, but why the switch from Canon to Leica, and why are you sticking with Leica, and why are you actually upgrading to a Leica M11? Like what's the thought process behind the tools that you use every day?
The Canon, although it's very good at what it does, like the autofocus stuff, it's, to me personally, it's the camera, how the camera feels with you and how you work with it is the most important thing. I think every brand makes a nice camera, but it doesn't, to me, I have no personal attachment to it. Like, half these cameras are so light, it feels like a toy. So for me, it's very basic. Aperture, shutter speed, ISO, manual focus. That's it. That's all I care about. And everything else, I don't want it where the camera is. I don't want the camera to think for me, because then every creative decision you make is being overwritten by the camera. It's like the amount of people I go around with where they're shooting auto ISO, and I'm like, why bother? It's just every idea you have has just been overwritten by the camera.
Yeah.
So, I don't even really use autofocus because, well, one, the cameras don't have them, but if the camera screws up a picture, then I'm pissed.
Because it's
if I mess up, then it's me.
Yeah.
I screwed up, and I can't blame anyone else but myself. So yeah, it just feels good.
And shooting M lenses on the SL or SL lenses? Yeah.
Yeah, M lenses all the way.
Favorite focal length, if there is one?
The 35 is kind of my go-to, but that 75, I spent about 2 years saving up, got that 75 Noctilux, and that thing is pretty insane.
That's f1 or?
It's 1.25, but the decision behind it was it's like, right, well, how can I add a new element to my work? Like with street, and using that 75, like obviously if you buy a lens like that, you're shooting it wide open. You don't drop that much money to shoot at f8, right? I wanted to be able to play with focus where I'm like using silhouettes in the foreground, but they're almost like paintings because they're completely blurred and out of focus. So you might focus on something in the background and use like shapes. So it was trying to bring another level of creativity to my street work with that lens. And it was like a high entry price point to get into it, but it definitely added another dimension to my work, I think.
And tell me the truth, are you able to focus it on the rangefinder patch?
No.
Okay, so you're using
it's my eyesight's not that good. The depth of field, like if you're doing a portrait, it could be one eye's in and one eye's out. It's ridiculous. So if you can do that on a rangefinder, fair play to you.
Maybe Soul Lighter could do it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's like, well, if it's blurred, it's art anyway. So,
yeah, exactly.
No, I use the VisiFlex. It zooms in, or on the SL2, it's great as well.
Yeah. SL2, might have probably the best viewfinder LCD in the biz.
Yeah,
for sure. Any tips? Let's stop talking about gear. That was the gear part of the show. We're done. But let's talk about what would you say to you teach a lot to young people, not so young people. What's your main tips that you're giving them? Because everybody wants to shoot like you, I guess, because they're like, oh, love Phil, love his work, love the way he teaches. But what is the main advice you're giving them when they all want to be
not to
Phil
shoot
Penman?
like me?
Exactly.
Shoot like you. It's supposed to be your voice. Otherwise, you just become like a second version of me, or a better version of me, right? Though the best thing that I can see is when your work is better than mine. Okay, or when I can look and I can see the progress of someone. We just had someone retake the London course who I taught once before, and the gain you saw in his work was insane. It's not like I'm saying that I had anything to do with that, but watching how people progress. So I would say you develop your own creative voice. That's the number one thing. I learned very early on with the paparazzi work. You see what everybody else is doing, and you do the complete opposite. If they're all over there, you go and stand over here. Bust your ass. You're going to absolutely have to kill yourself working, doing shitty jobs you don't want to have to do. You can't just walk into this business and just think that you're going to be at the top. It doesn't work like that. It's going to be 10, 15 years before you have a body of work that even has any depth to it. You want to be able to see the progress in your work. So if you're coming into it because you think that you're going to be an overnight success, you're not. You might have Insta fame or something like that, but that doesn't mean you're a good photographer.
Completely agree. And I think some of the people that are interested in photography have to understand this is not 1967. This is not 1983. This is 2022. And everybody has a camera, in their pocket that can take a very decent photo. Oh, yeah. So the goal is not to make a photo look perfect. It's to have, to your point, your own style, your own voice. People will hire. It's like when VCs are investing in companies. Sometimes they don't even know what the idea is. They invest in the founder or the person behind the idea because they're supportive. So I think you're making a good point there. Anybody that you feel inspired by, doesn't have to be another photographer, but who, what work are you looking at and gets you fired up in the morning?
TV, believe it or not.
Oh, there you go.
The show Gomorrah, again, based in Naples. Just when I saw that years ago, that just blew me away because it was just like shot after shot after shot. You could just freeze frame the whole thing. Wow. Roger Deakins, amazing cinematographer, artists. It's tough because you want to look at photography, and there are people like Frank Horvat, like Salgado, Arnold Newman. These guys I really like. Gordon Parks, Ruth Orkin, but it tends to be all photographers from the past.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing much today that I really like, which is sad. I'm sure it's out there, but it's just a lot harder to find it.
So if you are a talented photographer, feel that Phil could enjoy, send him your photos. He needs.
There you go. Yeah, I get tagged all the time on Instagram, and I see everything. So
I will say that you're not only a super talented photographer, educator, and so on. You do reply to people regardless of their follower count and so on. That's how everyone. We got connected through Instagram. So I do really appreciate that, and I'm sure that a lot of people do, because sometimes you look at people who quote unquote made it and they don't give a shit about small people who aspire to be like you or like any other.
But that comes back around.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm seeing it with photographers right now where you get to a point and there are certain things I'll get messages where it's like, someone's just trying to take advantage.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, let's do a 1-to-1. And what routes do you do?
Oh, okay.
So they're already going to try to, going to get screwed, and you're just giving them free. The one I respond to, every single one, is a student. So I must have done about 100 interviews for students. It was always, when I was a photographer and I was contacting photographers, I was always annoyed that no one could be bothered to take the time to help. So I've gone out of my way to help every student that contacts me, whenever they have like their end of year project or whatever. I do all of that. Respond to everybody, because you don't know what one little thing that you could say could completely change their whole career. And I've witnessed that with 2 people that I've said something to, and I've watched how their careers just skyrocketed. And it wasn't something big, but it was enough to make them change their path. So there's that.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know Gary V.
Oh my God, I'm the biggest fan. I met Gary. Yeah. I had dinner with Gary, and it changed my life. Just so you know.
Yeah, Gary said he answered every single comment until it was mathematically impossible.
Comments and DM. He spent 5 hours a day responding.
So I'm all about that.
Yeah.
It's just common courtesy. If someone says, hey, nice picture, the least you can do is say thank you, right?
Yeah, never forget where you come from and how you got there. My dad always used to say, be nice to people on your way up, because you might need them on the way down. And
you will.
So true. Well, we're getting I'm getting excited about this stuff, but we're nearing the end of the interview. What's next for Phil Penman? I mean, books, projects. You seem to be working all the time, but what's the next cool thing you're working on?
Get better.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, constantly. How can you elevate your photography? So I beat myself up about that all the time. It's like trying to try new things. Projects, always got projects on the go. I'd love to do another book at some point as well.
Please do.
But the goal is, like I said, very goal orientated. I set myself a goal of I wanted to have something in either MoMA or the Metropolitan Museum in 10 years, and I got my book in there. So next up is I want to be with a major gallery representative and do a solo show in one of the big museums. So that's the next goal. Well, 10 years.
10 years. Well, I'm sure it won't take 10 years, and I'll be one of the first ones in line to go see that and support. Phil, where do you want people to go see some of your latest work? And where can people find you online? I mean, you're everywhere, but where would you like people to go see online?
You can go on the website, philpenman.com, or Instagram, just Phil Penman, and LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm on all of them at some.
You're officially the Gary V of photography now, from now on.
Well, Seth Godin, he's my other favorite.
Well, I think we have a lot of points in common. And Seth, I also spent time with him, and he also changed my life. Yeah. He's a cool dude. Long story short, I've been in marketing for 20 years. So the inspiration: Malcolm Gladwell, Seth Godin, and Gary V. Those are my 3, inspirations on the marketing side.
I would say, as a photographer, if you want to learn, go watch those 3. Okay. Because it's not photography that you got to learn; it's marketing.
I completely.
So you're not going to learn that from a photographer.
We'll put a couple links in the show notes. People will be like, "What? Gary V, Malcolm? Like, who are these guys?"
Go watch Seth Godin; he'll change your life.
Yeah, Seth Godin. I mean, if you listen to the latest audiobook, I think it's called "This Is Marketing," or read the book, you'll find a lot of insights. And Seth has a way of explaining it, I guess, just like you, very, very eloquently, but also very simply. You don't have to be a genius or a marketing genius to understand how to do marketing.
Best glasses in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the head and the glasses, you can't miss it. So Phil, it's been a pleasure and an honor, really, truly, to have you on the show today. I want to thank you so much, because you're a very generous man, very talented man, and for creators like me and photographers like me and people who are listening right now, it's a blessing to hear you talk about photography and your passion for it.
No, I appreciate it, man. And yeah, totally overwhelmed. Appreciate it. All the kind words.
You know what? Maybe we cross paths in New York next week, and I'll show you how bad I am at photography, and you say something that changed my life. We'll see.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right,
Cheers, Phil.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.